About 2 years ago, I was able to find this Ryobi trimmer off the marketplace for free, and I've made several videos on it, such as repairing the fuel system, replacing the carb, and even comparing it to a Toro trimmer because they're virtually the same machine. But the time has finally come to send it to its new home. However, its new job will be a little bit different because the new owners have no need for another trimmer. Also on the table today is a Craftsman leaf blower, but it's not going to go anywhere. As of right now, I intend on putting my Kawasaki blower into retirement due to cost of replacement parts, so this one is going to be its replacement. I know it's a bit of a downgrade from the Kawasaki, however, until I find a better handheld, this one's going to have to do. What's up everyone, and thank you for stopping by. In this video, we're going to get these two ready for the next mowing season, and of course I'll have to include the next leaf season because of the blower. Now the trimmer is just the power head, which is good news because it means it can take attachments. Now I rarely change my attachments, and that's because I already have other equipment to do different jobs, so for me, I don't need this one. It's actually quite convenient because I happen to have this edger attachment in my collection to use for this power head. I don't recall how or when I got this attachment, but needless to say, you can always find people giving away free stuff on the marketplace, and I'm pretty certain that's where this one came from. Now these attachments are not cheap anymore, so I find these to be worth their weight in gold. Now, I don't personally use this power head, and that's because I prefer to use my Weed Eater brand Featherlight because it doesn't weigh very much. The reason I bring it up is because the last time I started this up was a few months ago, so before I send it on its way to its new home, I need to make sure the engine still works and that the edger attachment works as well. At least I don't have to worry about working on this thing because in the first video I ended up replacing the carb with a new one. Now the carb was a cheap aftermarket one, but I haven't had any problems using them. As long as you don't leave fuel in the tank, these should last for some time. The air filter is also in great shape, so I don't have to worry about replacing that either. Now, I don't know how much this thing was used before I picked it up, but according to the emissions sticker, this thing was made several years ago, and the fact is it still looks pretty decent, so I don't think it has a lot of hours on it. The next step is to put fuel into the tank, prime the fuel system, and hope it starts and runs. The fuel I'm using is a 40-to-1 mixture, 100% gasoline with no ethanol, and the 2-cycle oil is a very affordable full synthetic, and for good measure it's also been stabilized just in case I forget to empty the tank before storing it. The first thing I want to make sure that happens when trying to start a 2-cycle machine after some time is that the purge bulb fills up with some fuel. If yours doesn't do that, then there's a very slim chance that it's going to start. Ours was originally empty, but as you can see, it's got some fuel in it, so we can try and start it. This is why we do these test starts. It turns out the last time I took this trimmer apart to inspect it, I forgot to reconnect the throttle cable to the carb, so I'll fix that off camera. Let's try that again, and this time we shouldn't have any issues. Like I mentioned earlier, the reason we do these test starts before handing it over to the new owner is to make sure there isn't an issue with it, and it turns out we did have one. In one of the last videos, we took the front cover off the engine and I disconnected the end of the throttle cable, and it turns out I didn't reconnect it when I put it back together, so we fixed the issue and now it starts and runs just fine. I hope the new owners will be happy with it, and I know that if there are any issues with it, they'll contact me to fix them. Now, I don't expect anything to go wrong with it, but then again, I can't see the future. With that in mind, I will contact them during the fall to see if they'll start it one more time to run the engine, drive any fuel. That way it'll increase its chances of starting the next spring. Speaking of fall, I think it's time to start looking at that leaf blower. Now, this blower has a very strange history on this channel. I originally inspected it and said it was just too worn out to work without a rebuild. Later that year, I worked on a different blower that looked like this one, and when I took that one apart, I found that the rings were stuck, which made it seem like it was worn out. So it got me thinking that it might be the same situation for this one, and sure enough, after taking it apart, I realized it had the same issue. I was able to free the ring and did another compression test, and the test showed that it now has enough compression to run. So luckily, I was able to keep from using it for parts, or worse yet, throwing it away. So if I'm not giving this one away, why is it in this video? Well, when I got the blower back up and running, I showed it being used on some leaves in the woods, and it seemed to work well, and I used it quite a bit during the fall, but there was something I didn't like about it. The issue was that it was missing the lower blower tube. I figured I would keep it like this because it wasn't my primary blower, but things have now changed. Now, most of the viewers felt the same way, that it simply wasn't needed, but the problem was that my Kawasaki blower had both tubes and I really liked it that way. So I spent the money to get a new lower tube, and hopefully I don't regret buying it. I had been watching an online auction and they finally discounted it a few dollars, making it a little bit more affordable. Now, this lower tube was on sale for under $20, and even though I hate buying parts that don't go towards getting a machine working again, I do think this part will make it work a lot better. To install the lower tube, we just need to line up this channel to the bump on the upper tube, push, and then rotate. Now, it's important that I get these arrows lined up, otherwise the lower tube won't be locked into place. The upper arrow is located at the bump, while the lower arrow is located at a pocket where the bump will lock into. This might take more than two hands, so don't be afraid to ask for help. Now, once the arrows are lined up, it should not come apart accidentally. In fact, after some time, once the plastics become less flexible, it'll be almost impossible to remove the lower part. The only bad thing I can say about having the lower tube on here is that it's a bit unwieldy to maneuver now, but I find the extra reach will help me lift the leaves out of the grass. There is one more attachment for these tubes, but I don't think it's worth the money. The last thing we need to do is to test it out and see if it works any better. Now, the results are going to be subjective, and that's because I don't have any way of testing any improvements, but I hope to have something ready in the future. I don't typically like keeping two-cycle fuel in my equipment, and that's because I want to reduce their exposure to fuel, so if you ever pick up my blower or trimmer to use it, more than likely it's going to be empty. So it looks like it works even better with the extension. The reason is that it makes it easier to get the leaves out of the branches and twigs in the wooded areas. Now, this is not important if you're just blowing grass clippings across the driveway, but if you have the type of grass I have, which seems to hold on to leaves like Velcro, this should help out a lot. Like I said earlier, I hate buying parts for any piece of equipment that isn't going to help get it working again, but I think this purchase was well worth the money. I just hope this Craftsman blower lasts as long as my Kawasaki, but I'm not going to hold my breath. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions about this project or about your own projects, and I hope to see you in the next video.